Greetings, everyone. This is Timothy, the Digital Apothecary. So today, I want to do my annual CES review of different products I've seen that across news, media, social media that people are talking about, and just what products stood on got my attention, and really doing a bigger look into it of like what is the implications for healthcare, and especially for pharmacy. So hoping this video, especially if you're a pharmacist or related to pharma, is such that it can help you like look at and say, hey, these are cool products that are being talked about or presented at CES. So I'm gonna walk through some of them, give some of my thoughts, and then an overarching thought in terms of like where everything's going. So the first one I'm gonna talk about is Manoa. This one's quite interesting. This is not the first time I've seen someone trying to track and measure stress. I've seen a bunch of Kickstarter projects. I've seen a bunch of stuff across Indiegogo. And it's always kind of the same kind of concept. Like, can we objectively and quantify what is stress? And I think there's a lot of value to this because if you can point out to people when they're feeling stressed out, can you intervene and help them basically gain more management of that time period? You know, think apply mindfulness techniques or putting someone to help recenter themselves. But I also think there's some value here, especially across healthcare. We know many conditions such as like generalized anxiety disorder, sleep and such suffer from when people have stress. It can impact that. So I think as we get more information, we're going to move away from just using stress as a biomarker for wellness and move it towards maybe objectively as a digital biomarker for health. And I can see a lot of things that could be useful for too. So I don't know, I'm gonna keep my eye on this kind of stuff. Now, the next one that caught my attention was eMed. eMed, what this one was is that this was basically a kind of a cool package that comes together, and what it is that you basically buy a kit and you activate the kit when you think that you're having a condition that the kit covers, and then you scan it, activate your code for your account, and then you get a telehealth visit. And then where I'm not too quite so sure is either you get a prescription, then you go pick up the medication that the health telehealth system covers, or it comes in the package. Because when you look at the store, I'm gonna pick on this one. So this is like I'm gonna pick on. So this is a urgent care telehealth kit. So covers these four conditions. It's $100. Um, so I go looking at this one, and as I'm looking through, it was you basically scan as I said. Now here it says fast pickup with medications within hours, but then and if you look at like the telehealth for the COVID or flu testing, it includes a 24/7 demand telehealth visit, FDA RAT, rapid antigen test, screener for influenza, clinical evaluation, a thermometer, and then prescription medication included, which is going to be in this case Paxlovid. If it was flu, I don't know what it would be like. Would it be Tamiflu or something like that? Then you look at urinary tract infection. Again, clinical thermometer, rapid test for UTI, prescription medication included. When you look at the bottom, what treatment is available is going to vary, it sounds like. So I don't know if the medication would come with it and they tell you take it like empiric therapy, but what if the person had an allergy? How would you make it specific for them? Would you then defer they go pick their medication at the pharmacy? And I think that comes back to like, what is the value for this? I think the value to me comes back to is we know a lot of this stuff is floating around, especially pulmonary. What if you're traveling with family and you're like, I don't want to be in a situation where we get sick and having to go to urgent care, parents, kids, whoever else, and having to sit in there, get tested, then having to go find a pharmacy that you're not related to, or maybe you're traveling overseas or in a boat, I don't know. But having this there with you may be beneficial to treat a urgent condition. So I think that's where this comes into. It's going to be very much for a niche population that I think you could have a business model around. I'm surprised at the cost of $25 with everything that's included at the end of the day. So I'd be curious to keep watching this and see where it goes. I mean, like Paxlovid isn't necessarily cheap, so and the televisit, everything bundled together, especially when some people like that are currently running telehealth platforms are charging $25 for a visit alone. So this is very interesting. So I'm curious about their model, how they make it all work together. But I really like the concept. There could probably be other conditions that this would work out too, and it kind of fulfills like a whole overall remedy and home kit. I've seen this attempt being done, I think, for a UTI, one that you can buy in stores now. And what you do is you get like a test kit, and the test kit comes with a telehealth visit that comes with. So you test yourself for home UTI and says you have a UTI or a possible UTI, and then you get telehealth. And again, but the telehealth would then direct the patient to go to the pharmacy to pick a prescription that they would then prescribe. So this is an interesting like model, I think, being built. Could this stuff be sold in a pharmacy then? or around the pharmacy or something like that. I'm very curious about this. I think the bundling aspect of telehealth and products together will take off. Going next is going to be Artea. Now, this one is a French-based company. So what this one is that this is more hospital-based, and what they do is basically they're going for I think it was blood arterial gases. So instead of having to like do a sampling for blood draws, what they were doing is they actually developed a device that you can actually put your patient's arm and um, oh, actually, no. This one was to help with the drawing of the first shot and such, and like make sure they don't make mistakes. So that was that. Yeah. This one I actually thought was cool. So like getting more accurate and such. We see like AR. I'm sure you see like the AR picture of someone holding like a smartphone or something over a person's arm, and they can see where like the veins and vessels were. And I think we're trying to always get better with that kind of stuff. So this one caught my attention for that reason. Optive. Now this one was different for me, and what I mean by this being different is that um, I haven't really. I've seen a lot of people trying to get towards a point where how do we leverage AI technology and sensors to detect like what kind of infection a person currently has. So for those of us who've been testing like for COVID and such, you have at home rats that you can use, influenza, RSV, and some other ones can be more difficult. Going to urgent care, getting a test done there. So we're always looking for like how can we do testing better at home. Like I mean, I've gone through these situations, right? So I'm at home, my kids are in daycare. One starts coughing. I'm just like, oh no, what's that? Oh, they develop a fever. Going to make an appointment with a pediatrician and such. And could you do something and like test them? I mean, I hate to say like for those of you who have kids and you've tried doing this, like putting like doing even the at home rapid antigen testing and putting the taking a sample from a kid's nares is can be difficult. They don't like it. So I can see the benefit for something like this where you can just breathe in here and you get a result saying like what is the infection. So currently they're pre-EUA to the FDA, but activate the device, you blow on it, and then you get a result from it. I mean, I get the idea. I really hope that this be something that becomes much more available. With a focus on just as you have a thermometer at home. Well, now we have a device that can actually say, hey, something's going on, and is this a cold versus a flu versus COVID, and it helps you at least be like, okay, well, I have a measurement, and then I should seek medical attention. And the obvious benefits for some of this stuff is clogging up the healthcare space. Do people need to go to the ER? Do they need to go to urgent care? Do they need to schedule a telehealth visit? Versus like, hey, this thing says this, and this I engage in self care, or I should seek medical care. Those are types of things I think that really matter right now. So some of these other ones stood out from CES was like this was Smart Sound. So this one was cool because it's a smart stethoscope. I've seen a bunch of these over the years. I think Eco is one that stands out too. And these guys are basically having a bunch of different devices that can be used as stethoscopes. And I think what they're going after is also like the hospital home model, or telehealth, where patients can basically use this to do measurements on themselves. And, there's going to be a lot of cardiovascular pulmonary things that you can actually do for this and monitor for. Like this one was interesting. This is also fetus, which I thought was really interesting, especially involving OB in here possibly. And yeah, I mean, I get the idea. I think as we see more of these devices come out, from a remote patient monitoring standpoint, it's going to make a lot of sense. The catch is going to be definitely right. How long they last? Do patients need to be trained heavily on to use them? Do you start them in the office? Do you just mail it to a person's home? And this, I'm just speaking broadly across the whole space around this technology. I think as the price comes down and they're more readily available, I think that we'll see them used much, much more. So, yeah, I'm actually really excited to see. And this goes back to the same idea, like the breathing and not everyone has a stethoscope at home, but if you had this thing hooked up through some kind of API to someone's telehealth platform, they can like use it and be like, now I can tell the patient, put this over your heart, let me listen. Does it sound right? I listen to these breathing sounds. Yeah, I think there's a lot of possibilities here. Next, we have Vivo. Vivo is very much building on, I think, a lot of the ideas of how do we measure bodily fluids and get information. The next one I'm going to talk about is Withings, and that one got a lot of attention. But Vivo is kind of the idea that you could basically track a lot of metabolites and stuff in the body that come through the urine. So you use the urine test strip. So I'm gonna see if I can play this video here. Um, it was giving me a little difficulty when I tried doing this before. Let's see if it goes here. Okay, so not doing a very good job playing right off the bat, but here's the one that got me. This is all the difference that it says you can detect, whether it's magnesium, calcium, ketones, pH, sodium, vitamin C, protein, water, and oxidative stress through the urine. So this is very much a wellness product right now. And I think, wellness products make a lot of sense. I think those are a lot of things that um, there's a huge push in the overall society for, and we know that this is also the group that pays a lot of money for these products and such. So you can probably combine it with like health and exercise, things like that, um, and build upon it. Same thing like people now using CGM for weight loss or activity measurement points. So yeah, I see the possibility here. Now the difference with this one is that they get all this data. You get like your board that you go through saying trends and such that you can integrate, like they're pushing like activity, sleep, heart rate, stuff like that. What was cool or interesting here is like you have supplements being pushed through, and I can see this is like whether it's them selling the supplements or someone else they're going to work with, and based on your individual metabolites and everything else and what's coming out, they can say, hey, you benefit more from this versus this. And a lot of supplements may either be lipophilic or insoluble, soluble. So it's gonna vary at the end of the day. I'm not saying this is gonna test that you're gonna suddenly see for like watching for renal function and such. And what it comes down to is it's gonna be a subscription platform. So the cost here is basically 4 tests is gonna be $40 versus if you batch it and you get a 12 test, you're gonna pay $30, and then the price comes down as you buy more. So they're going to be making money for selling the test, but it looks like they're going to use this as a whole integrated platform overall. Next then is Withings. So Withings has, I think, what's called the U-Scan. This one they talked about more before CES, and this is where everyone was like, ooh, smart urine testing. And I wrote a whole article about this. I'll put it in the comments in the description if you want to read about it. The idea of a smart toilet to measure bodily functions, whether it's through like urine or feces, is not new. This idea and concept's been around for years. Issue has been cost. Cost has always been the big issue. It's just like, can you get something that's scalable that most patients can use? So this is one that you basically put in your toilet, like here, and urinate. Now this one was really, really interesting to me because it can detect different users based on their urine flow and such. From like men, multiple different men's, women and such, and their urine stream, and then you get a lot of different health metrics from this. And the difference here, and here you put like a different scanner in it each time, and it has different microfluids that can actually detect and do the scan with this cartridge. But it's very similar. Like you get all this different information. So like ovulation was one that was kind of cool for here. Again, nutrition and what's measuring, very similar to also what we talked about for the Vivu before. But these guys are all going to start from the wellness perspective. That has to be in the minimum. Once they can do wellness, and from that, whether it's a B2C kind of business, figuring out like how well people use it, what issues pop up with it, they're all probably going to switch to they want to be able to detect certain things that have clinical meaning. I think around like healthcare conditions, whether it's like, oh, I'm on diuretic and can I track how many electrolytes I lose or my renal function with this, and blah blah blah, diabetes, glucose, etc. So again, it's in the article. I go in depth with it, but I think that's going to be the end game here. But it's more of like a 2030 issue. I think that's going to come down. So, and then like, what user interface is it? Something you urinate on? Is it something that's in the toilet urinate? Is it a complete smart toilet? There's so many form factors here to consider. But I do think this can be a default at some point. Having a smart toilet in your home, I think, is going to be a default. And who do you get that from? Do you get it from CVS, or do you get it from like Best Buy that sells this kind of stuff? Who knows? I'm curious though. Nice is Jabra. So Jabra and a bunch of other people, we think about like music players and everything else like that. Um, Everyone's trying to figure out like more than like, okay, music, quality music and such, but like, can we actually use this for hearing? There's been this huge new thing about like how we actually sell hearing aids too. So there's about new rules and stuff that have come out for that. So everyone's trying to get into like the hearing aid business. So people are trying to use their technology for that. I think just because it's come so much further than we ever had in the past. So this is another option that was being presented at CES, and I think it's cool. I think The cost of hearing aids, I think over time is going to come down significantly because of how we do these things and how we use it. Um, do I get to a point though? Next up is like auto transcribing of people talking to me, for instance, like different languages. Like, do we get to that point here soon too? I think that'd be quite amazing. So I think audio stuff. I think we're gonna see a lot being played with too. Um, and the reason I bring this up is like especially because as we see this being so like just hearing aids in the pharmacy and such, I think is gonna be something that we'll see businesses get into and start using. So the next ones I'm gonna talk about some. I'm just gonna load these up and some CES awards, a project I saw that was kind of cool. One was basically a in vitro diagnosis system for Alzheimer's disease. We are seeing a bunch of dementia medications coming to market for Alzheimer's, biologics. As you have more of these products coming out, learning who to target them at is going to be the key thing here. And I think people are going to try attacking this. So it's going to be again like a dual thing. Like, how do we scale up testing? How do we scale up the ability to identify patients who need treatment? If we have more treatments available, how do we figure out who needs it, who to use it in? So we're going to need more diagnostic tools for that. So this is a market I think is going to grow, and I think it's piggybacking on the fact that we have now tools and devices for it. Because, hey, what better than devices that work with pharma, right, to batch it all together? Like, oh, we have massive amounts of ability to test who's at risk or who's developing Alzheimer's. Bam, we have treatment, onboard them faster. I think that's just going to be development, and I expect to see this with a lot of um, over time diagnostic tools expand, especially for around like either rare conditions or other ones that stand out that maybe we didn't have a lot of good treatments for over the years, but as the pharma has been investing more and more money into these things and more products becoming available, we're going to need to think about like more feeder tools in terms of trying to figure out how to onboard people because of how to spot check them and actually using tests. So yeah, kind of cool that this is out there compared to like when 20 years ago, this is something that would have been far out. And I think we're getting to a point where people are taking it seriously. But again, it's because there's options now available. Another one is Myling was interesting to me. This one was basically trying to do in-person therapy through an online platform that can be done with therapists or psychiatrists. So another key thing, what was cool about it is like it can measure heart rate variability through a smartphone on your finger, basically putting the camera on it to measure stress patterns and basically customize the therapy program around there. So, you know, is this going to be a digital therapeutic? Is this going to be more of a wellness platform? Is it going to be more for what kind of conditions does it want to take on? And, that's going to be the issue, I think, at scale, like, how it provides CBT and such. So, logistically, providing mental health care to people, especially that may not have the time or availability to drive and see someone, or schedule a time to see telehealth on demand, or just trying to get more personalized. I think these are all things that we are now taking seriously compared to like, just even before the pandemic. Like, if you want to see a therapist, like there's so many rules around telehealth that it was, not very easily accomplishable. And now that those walls have fallen down, we're now thinking alternately, like, how do we provide this type of care to people? So we're trying to use and figure out how do we take the technology we have, how do we expand upon it, and how do we deliver it? Does this mean that our use of medications goes down then? Possibly. Does it couple with medications? You have depression, you're an antidepressant, but you're not really getting a lot of therapy. Should you consider these types of tools because they had logistical barriers that they couldn't accomplish in the past? I think that's going to happen. I think we're going to have serious talk with patients. Be like, hey, I've seen that you've been on this, but are you having other help with this? They're like, no, my PCP put me on this. I'm supposed to see a therapist, but I don't because I don't have the time or the resources. Well, maybe we need to take a step back and start looking at that and asking people, have you seen alternative solutions? Whereas in the past it was like this and you couldn't do it. Now we have better solutions for you. Can we approach that way? And again, I think it's giving at least some equitable support that maybe people didn't have in the past. Again, a wearable patch. This one was around lung health for asthma COPD. Again, another remote patient monitoring device. This is the eVice MD. I think the whole idea of using RPM is really cool. The biggest thing I think that's going to come up here is, do we have devices that are just focused on one therapeutic area, whether it's pulmonary, cardiology, or do we look for like an all-in-one tool as one point, and then who's going to pay for that and want to support that? Are we in the middle? Is it is the mid 2020s the battle of devices and biosensors? I would say yes. I would say that's what it's going to be. Um, who uses them in clinical trials? Who uses them for remote monitoring? Do you choose whatever you want? Does it matter on the sensitivity, specificity that you want to monitor for? I think these are all important questions, and I don't have a good answer around it. The thing that comes back to me is I think these objective measurement points also tie into it for us as pharmacists to think about how effective is therapy working. So if we're talking about pulmonary in this case, like, and they're on and just started like a new treatment, and you want to say, hey, did that treatment actually lead to a better positive outcome? Is the patient saying they're feeling better? But can we actually measure and see if they're doing better or prevent exacerbations? 30 days after remission. So you put this on there. You just started them on, you know, new inhaler, new medications, whatever you want to do. Do you want to make sure it's actually working? I think that's the key thing. And maybe it's because batched with a pharmacotherapy at the end of the day, just to ensure that this whole program and pathway works. I think if it reduces costs and total cost of care, payers will come on board with it. But someone's got to show that. Just because you have a tool doesn't mean it actually works. In terms of like the whole flow platform and like the whole workflow that we think about for our current patient care, we have to open up new ways of doing it. Cardia, I love Cardia. Been playing with their devices since 2012, 2013. I remember I met a class when we got an early version of it. It's so interesting because I had like their version 1, which is like a big device that you put in the back of a smartphone. You hold your finger on it. Versus now, it's the size of a credit card. It's gotten so small, and now they have multiple rhythms on there. And I think this one's 6. Um, it can detect 6 the most common arrhythmias. So it's like it's come so far, and they're so tiny now. I'm just amazed at this, and um, yeah, I just in a decade how much this has shrunk. I think stands out to me. I think it's the most coolest part. So I give a lot of credit to them. Now this is from this is called the Nutri Manager. I think it's from AlgoCare, and the concept here is that have we gotten to the point where we have a 3D medication printer at home? I don't think we're there at this point, but this one is supposed to be able to generate precise, personalized nutrients combination of 4 millimeter size supplements based on user data and such. And I mean, dang, you wake up in the morning. I mean, do I get to this point where I wake up in the morning, you urinate in your smart toilet, and then you go take a shower while you urinate after you urinate, and this gets the data and says, hey, this person needs to change this, and they need these supplements for a day. And when you get out of the shower, this thing's right there, and you reach, and there's your morning supplement for the day. Take it with your cup of coffee. It's also been brewing from your smart coffee dispenser, I guess. Yeah, I think this is really cool in the theoretical purpose of like where we're going. Again, this one though, the supplements, this is a wellness market. Cost is going to be a big issue here. I think this is going to be something that you're going to see people paying for, and do you need a personalized supplement dispenser? I think it's gonna be a question that people can bring up. You can make many comparisons like, do you need a machine to do all this stuff when you can just go in a pharmacy and buy stuff over the counter? And yeah, I think there's a market here for it. I think it's gonna be one that's you have to show a lot of, um, benefit for, to be quite honest, for the cost is likely going to come with this. Why does personalized supplement generator have value? And, who's going to pay for it? I mean, there's a segment in the market that I think would pay for the cost for it and the money around it. But I know there's a large market that doesn't exist for it as well because they're not going to pay money for it. But people do like supplements. I think this is something that's closely to watch, this idea, because this concept has been brewing around personalized supplements as I talked about a previous product. But we've also like Tespo in the past. We've also had some other e-businesses trying to like personalize supplements and like what you want to aim for, nootropics and such. So I think this is something that beyond 2030 I'll see a lot more talk about. I think right now it's going to be like making it work, but definitely curious about this. I mean, I'm keeping my eye on this kind of stuff. I think this is this is sci-fi turning into reality, but I think reality is coming much closer and faster than we ever thought it could. Now, this one was interesting to me. This is a product that's supposed to help with cybersecurity and stop basically hacking and stuff like that by using AI blockchain. I don't know too much about this, to be quite honest. Um, call it Cyberbreak by Allpreve, but it's something I think we need to think about more as time goes on, like just cybersecurity realm, different medical devices. People are always worried about certain like pumps being hacked into and delivering products too fast. Like thinking about like all the things that hang in a patient room. If you screwed with them, could hurt someone. Like, but not all of them are connected to the internet, so it's not really a concern for that. But some other things could be, or even like remotely monitoring stuff like that. Like as we get to the CGMs, closed loop diabetes systems, is that pose a risk for hacking? You know, Someone might take advantage for it, and this is something I think people are going to think about. We've seen a lot more hospital hacking coming and occurring, so how can we how should we think ahead? I think this is something that we'll see more products focused on, talked about too. Next, we have Movano Health. Now, Movano Health here is basically a another smart ring. So you've seen probably like the Aura Ring. I've never got into the smart ring market. I use generally a smartwatch, but I've been considering getting into smart ring market just because there's some other features like core body temperatures you can measure. I like the idea that they can do a lot of different functions for it and longer battery life. I think I don't like wearing a smartwatch to sleep. Personally, I find it bothersome, but a ring doesn't bother me. So could that be where I can help measure my sleep and such? I don't know. But I like to see this more on a market. Now, this one is also talking about spending grade for women. Big thing about them that they're looking for into is also if you can determine if someone's pregnant or not, or stuff like that, and things like that stand out. I think this is kind of cool. More design, more products out there, more availability. Smart rings, another factor that people have been looking at for years. So, it's going to come down to how old does it fit, how do you charge it, what data is collected, what can you do with it, blah blah blah. Even smart rings like Aura, where smart could you actually use them to detect if people are developing like COVID too. As a predictive modeling tool. I like it all. I do. Again, though, it's very much focused on a certain market segment. Um, More of an expensive product. I don't know if payers can come down and say, hey, we're going to prove the same thing that we deal with smartwatches right now. Until they get to a medical grade that they show more benefit entering the RPM or remote patient monitoring market compared to like all the other wearables I talked about beforehand, I think it's still a little bit farther out, at least at this current time. Now, this one is an Aura. This one is quite interesting to me. So, save me some of the interesting ones for last. This is the idea of using a selfie to collect health information. So look at this, like heart rate, breathing, systolic blood pressures, diastolic blood pressure, irregular heartbeat, heart rate variability, cardiac workload, mental stress index, anxiety, depression, like it goes on and on and on. Now, if it can do all these types of things, you know, we are looking at one of the most game-changing, I think, technologies out there in terms of how people can screen for health. What if in the, think about like all like the health clinics that people offer, like, they talk about like blood pressure screening clinics, stuff like that. I've seen a lot of like, you come in, you like a, iStat device or something else like that, that you can like measure cholesterol stuff. And then you get this measurements, you talk to patients, so public health screening. But like, if this comes out, this can do all these types of things and you get like a full on screening tool, I think it opens many things, like not in terms of like just getting patients to screen and, keep ahead for preventive wellness and health, but also like, can we track and actually see from a really cheap factor how well people's health is and how well they're actually doing, especially cardiometabolically. Um, I really am curious about a lot of this stuff, this concept, because from a scalable factor, it's huge, right? I mean, you can, if you're clinical, you can see it's like, holy crap, that's really impressive. Again, from a clinical perspective, how correct is this at the end of the day? That's going to be the question. So I'd like to see this explored more and talked about, and people do research and pump out and show how well it works. The concept is cool to me. I'll leave it for the data and the research to come out and say how correct and how good it is. I mean, if it works, a lot of applications right here. I can see it across many different things. Health screenings, onboarding for pharma trials, siteless clinical trial designs. I see a huge value for like again, telehealth services and such, and people doing scans instead of using all these other devices, right? Because you just take a picture. But I think there's a lot here that still has to be uncovered. But cool. I mean, this is CES we're talking about. I've over the years have talked about new products that never come to market, but I like the ideas and concepts, seeing what people are looking at. So really want to see this one, where it goes. I'm going to closely watch this one. Now, next one is what was this one? Hydration. So I think we recognize in Lego. The idea of monitoring hydration through a wearable, for dehydration. I'm actually curious about this one. Patches with this, like, is it availability for sports? Is it for if you're out exercising and such? What can you do with it? But this is a market I could see people doing for different reasons, and not I say sports, but also like people who work outside. Um, One of the things I did in college, my summer job was actually working in a factory, doing preventive maintenance in an industrial building, and working in a workshop. I remember drinking like 2 gallons of like Gatorade a day and never going to the bathroom. I knew my hydration was bad. It was just terrible. It was always just sweating because it was a lot of heat inside from welding and such, and just industrial machines around. And there's I think there's a probable market here that probably beyond thinking just in terms of like health payers and such like that. Like maybe there's something else here that's brewing from just workforce development and tracking and safety. Do we get to a point eventually where OSHA says like, if you're in an environment that you're at risk for something, we should closely monitor you for different things. So this one came out to me for a little more personal reason for that. And I never really thought about this stuff in that way in the past. When we say like, patients with conditions and such, but I'm wondering, is this like a tool that we never really thought about in the past? And last one is Valencell. Valencell is basically blood pressure measurement, but this was different because this one is meant to be taken. Where is it? Um, 1 second with me, because it makes more sense when I show you. Okay, it's from the fingertip. So basically, you put in a fingertip. It reminds you of SpO2 measurement, but it takes blood pressure instead. So that's really cool. Not a cuff that goes around the upper arm or the wrist, but now we're getting down to the fingertips and blood pressure measurement. And I've seen some people pushing this idea. I've never played with it personally. So, is this a quicker way to just measure blood pressure? Ambulatory care, blood pressure measurements. And, we have Omron out there as well. This one and many other ones are people are pushing. I think remote patient monitoring for hypertension is going to be drastically much more easily accomplishable once you have the right tools that people can actually measure and track. And they want a form factor that's quick and easy to use and accurate at the end of the day. So this stuff I'm really curious about, especially as it come down in cost. Now, last one was an honorary I saw was AI for pets. All right, taking a picture again and getting issues around like potential eye, skin, or joint-related diseases and conditions. I think the pet market is going to be huge. I think it's going to be where we see a lot more health stuff come out too. Veterinary pharmacy, veterinary care is huge, but I think it's going to explode, especially because there's a lot of people in my age group that don't have kids and won't have kids, but they'll have pets. So I think pet care market's going to increasingly grow, especially as you see the pet insurance market also expand too. So really curious to see how we start putting more technology into this. I think it's kind of like, okay, we can do this for humans. How can we do this for others? Like, even if I go back to Cardia started with humans, but Cardia also has a veterinary version of it product as well. So I think this market is going to grow and basically build upon what happened with humans. So like telehealth for pets, wearable devices and such. I think that's where we're going to go. And it might make more sense for pets because, they already wear collars, for instance, and are used to wearing some of these design form factors. You can build around it. So this is not a market I used to think about. This might be something I write about and put out in the future. Like, what is digital health out for pets like? But hey, maybe that's where we're going for at the end of the day. So, coming back to this, key things that stand out to me. Remote patient monitoring, I think, is big. the whole pusher, like a lot of people are joking, like urine testing, Withings, what was Withings thinking? They're not the only ones. A lot of people are thinking this. I think the medical use is going to become big in the future, but I think a lot of building on the patient's home as a center of care is going to be reinforced. I don't know how quick a lot of these devices are going to come to market. I don't know how many of them are going to be used right away. Are we still looking at trickle down digital health where we have a lot of B2C products that you hopefully roll out, test, they build some data, and they show benefits in some areas in some patient cases, and then you go back to a regulatory body and say, hey, can we get this for a medical purpose? And then you try going, business to insurance, payer to cover at the end of the day. Maybe, I don't know. But it's definitely trends that I'm noticing compared to like past 2 years I've been doing this. I think like there are a lot of people are throwing themselves in with a lot of biosensors now. The hot topic that get slapped on is like AI or systems powered by ADI to detect these things. We have a great algorithm to see this and do this. I think that's cool. You want to say something that you can stand by how you accurately deduce that something's going on, but even going back to the eMed platform, that stood out to me. Like, I think it's going to be bundled. I think a lot of stuff's going to be bundled together, especially around certain conditions. I think that's where it has to go. So you really have to meet a lot of things, like meet where patients have concerns, figure out how it works in the clinical workflow, and the missing list is who's going to pay for it too. So those are three things. I think the payer one is the one that's going to be a larger uphill battle for a lot of people right now. And I think that's why digital health is going to be so slow. Payers are going to be slow for this stuff. But, they're going to look at this stuff and say, hey, show us the evidence at the end of the day and make it worth their while. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this. Look forward to doing this again next year. I think this year was quite a lot of interesting products that people are sharing and talking about. So we say see where it goes from there. So you guys take care. Have a good evening. This is Timothy Thomas, the Digital Apothecary. Put a comment below if there's other products you heard about that you want to share with others. And for me, definitely I'll look into them as well. Take care and thank you.